The one, the only Cooper Mays joins us. Always love that. And just by the way, Cooper, I'm not going to tell you who, but somebody that you know gave you some pretty immense compliments recently that knows football and that thinks you're one heck of an MVP. As a matter of fact, this person used the MVP on the entire team.
I appreciate it. I don't know. I have no clue who you're talking about right now.
No, he asked me not to tell you, but let's just say you're going to be having dinner with him soon. How about that?
Oh,
All
okay.
right. So let's get rolling into this. We had a discussion on my show, which airs weekdays at 10 a.m. with Caleb Calhoun. We had a discussion. We want you to hit the like and subscribe button so you can take that in about where would you most want to be elite as a football team. So I'm going to make you Coach Cooper. How's that? You're now the head coach and you're starting your own program. You guys have an opportunity to be elite on the offensive line, be elite on the defensive line, and I believe be elite at quarterback. Where would you most want to be elite if you're putting a program together?
It would just depend on if you're saying like, it would have to be the offensive or defensive line. But I mean, I guess you could. I don't know how specific you're trying to be, but if you can get the trenches right, like the O&D line is where you need to start. Honestly, there's some teams that I've seen that have played with weaker O lines that have still made it work, but it's usually not in the SEC. So I mean, if you're trying to win in the SEC, you got to be really strong up front.
That's interesting. Do you care to share with me some of those programs that you've seen win with an okay offensive line, or how they did it? Can you provide any insight to that? You don't have to name.
Probably not the name, but
Okay.
I mean, if you have a great quarterback and great skill players, there have been some teams, that can get around having an average offensive line. If the ball's getting out really quick and you can get on the perimeter, then I don't know. There's some teams that can do it, but usually, like I said, that's not in the SEC.
No, not. Why doesn't that work in the SEC?
Because the D lines I feel like are so dominant consistently. It's so hard to get a playoff against a dominant defensive line or a dominant front seven if you can't block them. So it's very complicated if you can't get that done.
How much do you and Nico spend time together? Because your eyes essentially have to see the same things and decipher the same things. I'm just curious, an average week, how much time you guys spend together?
Probably depends on if we're in the season or not. But I mean, every day we're together at workouts. After workouts, if you're doing stuff on the field, usually me and him will be together, or me and a quarterback in general will always have to be together. So yeah, just depending on what he's working on and what I'm working on, a lot of time.
Gotcha. So how much does that help when it's just you two, since you're setting the protection schemes? I mean, is it good? Is it beneficial for you guys to spend alone time together, so to speak?
Super beneficial because I mean, I've been in a lot of situations where the quarterback has, been established and been older than me, but Nico's a young guy who's still trying to learn and still trying to figure stuff out. So he comes to me with a lot of stuff, trying to figure out blitzes and asking me if he can do certain stuff with flipping the pros and everything. And I'm always good with it and want to help him. So he's a really good kid. He's really humble and really wants to figure it out and understand it himself. So it's a big help.
Yeah, I would imagine so. And then you're also the leader of the group on the entire offensive line. I would certainly think the vocal leader. Maybe you're not screaming at people, don't get me wrong, but you are the leader in the locker room, I would imagine, given your stature. What does that entail? I mean, what do you take pride in about that?
I just take pride in people trusting me. I think that's a big part of my why when it comes to football. I mean, obviously you talk about your family and helping your family out and everything, but on the day to day, I really enjoy being around the guys and them having faith in me. So, I know when I speak, people listen. So I really value that trust.
Do you ever think back how different things were when you were a freshman, how far you've come to being a guy that couldn't find a position to some extent, had injuries, and now you're one of the most important players in the SEC?
Yeah, I look back on it, especially as I'm older now, but just kind of special what this place and this game has brought me, honestly, and super thankful of how far I've come, and I've just been really really blessed for sure.
For those that don't know, they can follow Cooper on Twitter, and he's got pinned up in his Twitter page that he was undersized as a prospect, and I think that's probably still motivation for you, or is it?
Yeah, no doubt. I think so. I mean, nobody I feel like gives me the respect I probably deserve, in my opinion, but it doesn't really matter too much. I show up and I do my job at a high level. I feel like so. Just got to keep getting better.
No, no doubt about it. Anything in particular that you work on now during this time of the year?
Right now, just honestly, I'm trying to get in there and try to get huge. Just getting a big pump in. Every time I go in there, because we're not in actual workouts right now. It's May break, so I'm just going in there and trying to get swole.
Gotcha. All right. I want to, can I ask you about a couple of the, maybe somewhat backup offensive linemen that could end up playing a factor? And one would be, Shamanov Umarov. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correct. I guess it goes by Sham. I don't know.
You can call him Sham.
Sham. Okay. All right. Well, that's better than Hooker. Sham is better than Hooker.
Yeah, for sure.
What can you tell me about him and his progression?
Sam's a really good kid, and a guy that I kind of been surprised how much he improved. Honestly, he's taken a big step that you like to see out of somebody from their freshman and sophomore year, which is, your first year, you're kind of just trying to figure stuff out and just trying to make it through kind of to a certain degree. And then your second year is usually when you kind of take a big step, and you haven't gotten it all figured out even by a long shot, but there's a significant improvement. I think he's taken a big step forward this spring, or this past spring.
Pretty impressive. I want to ask you about a couple of the other guys that could potentially play this year. One, Bison Lang. Now he's your backup at center, so I hope he doesn't play unless he plays guard. But your thoughts on Bison and what he's done to this point?
I like Bison a lot. Bison's in there with me in the mornings, and he's still up here hanging out and getting some work in. And he's a kid that wants to get better and still trying to figure it out. Still has some steps to make, but he's a good kid. I like him a lot.
How hungry is he? Because he's got this season to get this thing down pat.
He's pretty hungry, man. He needs to stop eating as much as he does. I tell him to stop being so hungry, personally.
Stop being. So do you have to give out little tips like that to some of your guys?
Yeah, I mean, just the thing is, like, everybody's on their first try at this thing, and everybody's been young, and some people take longer to get it than others, and some people get it faster than others. But some people you gotta talk to. I'm not a guy that likes to talk all the time about, like I'm not ever gonna pick on a kid about something he struggles with. But I mean, at some point you gotta speak up and help these kids, because just I was 18 once, and I know how hard it was to keep focused and do the right stuff. But sometimes you got to put it in perspective for these kids that this is, as much as you don't want it to be, this is your life, and this is your job. And if you can't do the right things and show up the right way, and then you're already messing yourself up and messing everybody else's thing up. So got to lock in.
You keep saying these kids. Do you feel like the old man?
Yeah, I was honestly catching myself when I was saying it. I feel older than I probably am. I mean, I'm only 4 years older than these kids, but I don't know. It seems like I've been here forever, so I feel like grandpa sometimes.
Do you like that role though?
I do. I've grown to like it, because I had people that probably like Trey and Cade and all the old guys that I was around, especially Trey. I mean, Trey looks at me probably like I was a kid when he was in his fourth year, I guess would be his senior year, but he probably looked at me like this kid, you know, when he talked about me. I was his little brother. So finally, I've gotten to a point where I'm old enough where I feel like I can pass on some of the teaching and stuff that I see.
Was there ever a time that you didn't want to be that guy, that you just wanted to do your job? And center kind of that comes with the territory, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's not as much you don't want to do it. It's just more unfamiliar and a little bit weird, you know, because we've talked about it on here before, but I've always been the little brother. Like I've always had an older brother, and then I've always had people older than me in the room until this past year that I kind of like looked up to. I mean, I had Jerome and Darnell back in 2022. And then this past year was kind of my first year where I felt like I was, you know, the guy that kind of everybody looked up to a little bit in a way. So it's a different role, and you kind of just gotta grow into it a little bit. But this is, I guess, my second year kind of doing it. So
Yeah, being the man. I want to ask you about another young guy, Larry Johnson the third. What can you tell me about him?
kind of the same kind of thing with what I was saying about Sham. I mean, I think he's older than Sham, and I don't know how many years because I know he went to JUCO and everything. So I don't know exactly how old he is as far as years go, but this was his first year at UT, kind of getting a feel for things. And another guy that took a big step this past spring, especially in pass pro. I mean, he's a huge guy. He's probably one of the bigger guys that we have, like on the whole team, definitely. So seeing him actually be able to put some stuff together and pass pro and everything, and use his hands and use his length correctly, it was pretty cool to see.
The Vol Report with Cooper Mays is brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com. We love them. We loved having lunch with those guys. We had a good time with those guys at lunch, didn't we?
Man, the burger was fantastic.
That's absolutely right. Check out City Heating and Air Conditioning. Other HVAC companies will try to say, we're going to charge you for a whole new unit. No, that's City. That's who I work with, and that's who you should work with. Cityheatandair.com, cityheatandair.com. Do the young guys realize that they are one twisted ankle away from being in there? Do you feel confident that they get that?
No, they definitely don't. You know, and they shouldn't. You know, they're. I mean, like it just depends on who you're talking about when you say young guys. I mean, I'm sure there's some people that realize how serious it is, but it's kind of hard to realize how serious it is until you get thrown in the fire a little bit. You know, you can tell somebody one thing, and they won't really get it until they experience it. So, you know, I was in that spot my freshman year where I was a twisted ankle away, or whatever you want to call it. I think I started like 2 or 3 games because and Kennedy, you know, during COVID season, you know, some people miss games. I don't know why, but you know, I had to go in there, fulfill some duties and everything. But I feel like I did my job and everything, and that's all it takes, is just being able to get in there and build a little bit of confidence, and then you're kind of good to go. But you know, at the end of the day, like I said, you're 18, 19 years old. It's not a friendly environment to be in.
You say taste the fire, so to speak. And I'm curious, did you have a moment where you were like, I gotta up my game off the field because this is a little bit harder than I thought it might be? Did you ever have a game like that?
Um, I mean, I've definitely had some rough moments and times where I've not played as well, but I've never, I don't want it to happen, but I've never really gone out there and felt like I didn't really belong, if that makes sense. Like I got beat a couple times, but I never felt like I went out there and got like manhandled or was like really outmatched or anything. But I'm sure most people do feel like that. Like I had Trey and Cade and Trey and Jerome next to me my whole time. So they kind of took care of me. And then I was, you know, I wasn't going to be an easy win out there. That's for sure. I knew I wasn't going to win every play, but I knew I wasn't going to get embarrassed or get done bad. So I don't know. I mean, at some point it's a little bit of a pride thing. Like I've always been kind of outmatched my whole life. So I've learned to deal with it and figure out ways to do it.
Love that. And he's Cooper Mays. I'm Dave Hooker. The Vol Report with Cooper brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com. Integrity matters. This has been a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.